morning. Welcome back to our shop just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Hey, today's project is going to be for us to do a little bit of work on this Victorian-style piano stool. I'm not sure how old this is. These were popular in the end of the Victorian era. They featured some cast iron claw feet over glass bulbs and an adjustable seat height by spinning. This piece has been painted, so it's difficult to tell what it's constructed of. And also, when I flip it over, there are some Phillips head screws that are mounting the iron support to the underside of the chair. That would, of course, date it after World War II. However, the screws that hold these on are slotted. So I'm really not sure how old this is. If it was original, it would probably be the 1900s. If not, I would think probably the late 1940s, early 1950s. It has a very pretty added seat. Someone had cross-stitched this, so we'll make sure that we protect this before we go much further. But the owner has asked me to disassemble this and clean and re-glue all the legs. Apparently they've had a problem over the years with the legs falling off, and they have an elderly relative that's used a lot of Gorilla Glue and some other things to try to fix it herself. Gosh, you know, bless her for trying. And so we'll have to clean that up and take care of that. I'm going to leave the finish exactly alone. They haven't asked me to refinish it, so the painted finish will stay on. We'll definitely cover this to protect it, and then we'll flip this over, and we're going to disassemble the legs, the stretchers. We'll make sure the post is secured properly, and then we'll put the whole thing back together. If we have any really loose joints, I'll use epoxy, but other than that, I'll use just yellow glue. That way, 30 or 40 years down the road, if somebody needs to disassemble this, they'll be able to. So stick with us, and we'll get to work. Hey, I bring you inside just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. You can see here this joint is just overflowing with Gorilla Glue. This one here has been re-glued, it looks like with a Gorilla Glue that's been scraped off. This joint here is loose. This will give you an indication of the original finish. It was an original lacquer finish over stained wood. This joint here also has been Gorilla Glued. This one here as well. This one is loose already, so that'll give us a place to start. And then if you look down here, let me bring you down here, where the legs dowel into the turntable, you can see that these are pulling out as well. So what we'll do is mark every single piece. We'll go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, and we'll label these as A's or match them up however I can do it that I remember. And those then will give us an idea when we go to reassemble where everything goes. Because when you disassemble a chair, if you don't mark everything, I promise you within 5 minutes you are going to have pieces of wood. You have no idea where they go. So take the time to mark them. I'll do that, and then I'll bring you back and show you how I pulled it off. Okay, we're all marked, so we know what we're doing when we go to put it back together. What we're going to do now is start to try to pull these out and disassemble them. Wherever they're stuck, we'll use the heat gun and heat up the joint and work it out. Now, because this is painted, we have to be very careful that we don't use so much heat that we bubble the paint. So we'll be very, very careful with that. But I believe we're ready to get going, so let's fire up the heat gun and start taking this baby apart. Bring you in, kind of let you see what I've been doing. I had to turn the camera off because it was very difficult for me to work with the camera in the way. But I used this clamp here as a spreader between these two legs, and when I opened it up, it immediately popped out this joint here. I continued with the heat, and this joint here is now starting to loosen up. but it's still fairly tight. And if I look down here, I've got this joint as well. I'm sorry, this joint as well is coming apart. So I think what I'm going to do is heat this joint up, try to pop this leg off, and then I can put this right in the vise and work on this without running the risk of, as I twist this, damaging down here. So what I'll do is, one more time, I'll warm up this with the heat gun, pop this joint out, and I'll secure this leg off the chair and remove this spindle. Well, after about a half hour of wrangling, we got this disassembled. You know, it's like anything else. Once you start doing it, you'll figure out the best way. And for us, the best way was to work on loosening this joint here. Then I tapped a wedge under the leg to pop that out. And then I was able to remove it as an assembly and take these pieces out that had been glued over the years so many different times. We got everything apart without breaking a thing. And you can see now why it's so helpful to mark things, because you just wind up with so many pieces you have no idea where they are. Kind of an interesting thing that I found when I took this center finial off, you can see that this is supposed to thread into this coarse thread of the elevation mechanism, and that's been gone, stripped out of there for years. So when you collapse the chair, this is staying behind, and that's where we had that gap, and that was probably helping to cause the looseness that eventually had the legs tearing out. So we'll fix that. What I'll do is I'll put some pieces of veneer inside there, and that'll effectively reduce the diameter of that hole and allow us to thread that back onto that iron piece, and then the mechanism will work again. When I got the feeling that I was going to have to take this piece off, I stopped what I was doing and marked it. So this now actually will key the legs back where they belong. It's marked. It's marked to here. And this, the whole assembly from here up needs to be put back together the way it was. And once that's down, this can go on any way it wants, because it doesn't matter whatsoever. So the next step now is to clean all these joints, and what I'll do is with scrapers and chisels and whatever, I'll get all the old glue off, and there's no real sense for you to watch that. That's pretty boring stuff. And when we get ready to reassemble this, we'll bring you back, and of course we're going to have to we'll reassemble this dry at first, and then we will figure out a clamping plan, because stools and chairs and their compound angles and slopes always make for interesting glue ups. But there we are. We're disassembled, and that's how far we've come so far. We have all the glue cleaned off the dowels, or in this case the spindles and the legs. These are actually turned into the legs. They're not dowels. And we have them all cleaned out of the holes. This piece here, I glued a piece of oak veneer into it so it'll bite into these threads. And I'm about ready to thread it back on to this spindle shaft. I will set you up so you can enjoy my struggle. appears we've got it down as far as it's going to go. It's tighter than heck, and that joint right there will be made up when this is turned over. This will slip down that 1/4 inch. But there is no more turning this on there tight, and that is on there. So we'll call that a win, and we'll get ready to dry assemble this thing and glue it up. Well, I dry fitted it, and I took the seat out. You can see it just screws all the way out of the top. And it is absolutely rock solid, and all the joints are tight, and I've got all the joints in where they belong. But there's one thing that's just bothering the daylights out of me. Look at the gaps on all of the legs. Now, this is the way it was when I got it, and it ain't right. And you can see here that we still have this gap between this center pillar and the underside of the chair, and that is absolutely as tight as I can get it. But I can't help but thinking, if this went up the 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch that it needs to, but wouldn't it bring this all up and allow me to bring these legs in to close that gap up? I'm going to disassemble this whole thing and see. And again, I'm not even sure that these legs, the way they're drilled, will allow me to put the shoulder of this cut flush up to here, which is where it really should be for ultimate strength. Right now, the whole weight of the stool is balancing on this little piece right here, and that's not the best joint in the world. But I think what I'm going to do is disassemble the whole chair and then see if there's any way I can get these joints flush. If the angle that they drill them and the dowels are such that this can't draw any tighter when it's by itself, then I know I've got it reassembled correctly. But if I can get these legs to take this part and come up and make this flush with the underside of the stool, then I'm going to draw my attention back here and see if I can get this all the way up to the top. And again, remember, this was a threaded piece, and there was a ledge that stopped the mechanical or the metal threaded piece from going down any farther. So let's take a look, see if we can get these legs to sit flat. If not, this is the way the bench is. This is the way it's probably been for 100 years. But until I'm 100% sure that it's 100% right, I don't want to go any further. So I'll bring you back when I get it disassembled. Okay, we flipped the stool back upside down. I took this stretcher out here, and let's take a look at this leg as an example. With nothing keeping it from going any direction it wants, I can't tighten that up. That joint won't tighten up. It's how it's drilled. Let me take this out and show you. You can see the angle that's turned into the joint and the angle that's drilled into the hole. And when that dowel goes in there, sorry for shaking you around, it's not going to ever draw tight. And I don't know if that is a design flaw or a style statement or whatever, but that's never going to be a flush joint. And it's not like it's being stopped because there's anything in here. We've cleaned those out right down to the base of the hole. So, you know, the legs splay out as a style statement, and to do so, they pull away from the base there. So we've got it the way it's designed to be. All the legs are in exactly the same situation and about the same angle. So I'm just going to reassemble this because this is apparently how it goes. And this certainly isn't going down any farther because it has that lip in it, as I had told you before. So this is it. Let's get ready to glue it up. We'll figure out our clamping plan, and then we'll be done. clamped up. It's absolutely rock solid. And for our clamping plan, what we did is use the band clamp to pull all the spindles together. And when you use a band clamp on wood that's curved or angled, the clamp wants to fall off or creep up. So what I did is I just used these spring clamps, stuck them on the legs, and then ran the band clamp right up to them, so when I tightened it up, the band clamp didn't creep up. But you can see the joints are all pulled nice and tight. And then the only other question then became is how do we clamp the legs to the seat? And what I like to do, because when I don't ever want to have them clamped so that there's a rock in them, what I like to do is set it so it's nice and flat, which this is, and then put a weight on it. So because we have this little metal piece here for the seat, I couldn't just put my gigantic anvil right on there, so I put a couple of 2x4s there, and then I put my my broken old-time anvil, there's a whole story behind this one, on there. So that's given weight down, which is causing these joints to pull as tight as they can. And again, we've already talked about why there's that gap there. So this thing is out now absolutely rock solid, and when the glue sets up, I'll take the anvil off, we'll screw the seat back in, uncover it, and she'll be done. So hopefully we've helped that family who've been struggling with this this loose stool problem for years now, and hey, maybe it's going to have another 100 years of good use. So thanks for joining us. This one gets a thumbs up, and from just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards. See you next video. Bye.